Hi folks, welcome to Set Apart Homestead, the prepared homestead. So, what do you guys think about Virginia? What's going on there? If there's any of you watching that live in Virginia, please, I encourage you to chime in on the comments about what your personal take and what you're seeing going on there that maybe some of us that are, reading online and watching the news are missing. There's been a lot of talk that the Civil War that has been talked about, and I've talked about it, this looming potential Civil War, could start there. And I thought it'd be worth talking about today. And there may be some of you out there that haven't really been following it. I will admit, in the beginning, I really wasn't following it as close as I should. I think it's one of those things, well, it's not my state, it's not where I live, it's not going to affect me. But that's really not how things work. We live in such a, global society. As much as many of us hate that, it is true. And so stuff that happens over there, it's going to affect us. We like to joke and pick on, and then there's a lot of truth to it too. California as being this, communist state, and they really are. And, I apologize for any of you people listening that may be from California. I'm not picking on you, but your state has been a communist state for a long time. And, from time to time, they pass some radically ridiculous law, whether it's guns or some other personal rights, impeding and infringing upon them. But it's really gotten to the point that I think most of the country is just like, it's California, you want to be a communist, go live in California. And so I don't think, and I could be wrong, this is all personal opinion, most of this video is going to be personal opinion, that if something was to happen, the bubble popping, the straw that caused a civil war, I don't think it would actually happen in California. Number one, there's not enough, staunch, patriotic, conservative, independent-minded people that live there anymore, at least in the southern part, to really make a stand anyways. And I think most of us have just already given up, because the reality is the war has already been fought and won, depending on which side you're on, in California. The left, the communists, they've already won. They've won California. You're not going to get it back. And so the, any type of civil war, and that would be a cold civil war, it's already been fought and, lost or won in California. So I think most of us have already given up on them. And, when stuff comes out of California, we're like, man, that's ridiculous, but, well, it's California, we just kind of expect it. But we've got Virginia here that, historically has been a very, very conservative state. They've been very pro-gun, very much for independent liberties and personal rights. And then all of a sudden now, they're trying to pass laws that, if they pass them, we're talking the most radical gun control legislations that this country has ever seen. All-out confiscation, extremely limiting the ability to own a firearm legally in Virginia. Not only that, but they're wanting to pass laws that greatly restrict your freedom of speech and freedom to gather and associate with people. There's some pretty radical stuff coming out of there. And you know what? Virginia is like so many states, especially Midwestern states and Southern states, that the great majority of the state is still really conservative, but it's being railroaded and run by, 2 or 3, highly populated regions, these cities that are, very overwhelmingly to the left and apparently to the hard left. And they're running the state, and we see that happening all across the nation. I could think of many states that are that way. Arkansas, Missouri. Although Missouri still, thankfully, keeps a votes very conservatively and passes good conservative laws for the most part. But Kansas City and Kansas City and St. Louis are pretty liberal, and sometimes it's hard to defeat their vote. Texas is one of them. Look how big Texas is, the population that it has, and really politically it's run by 3 or 4 cities, and it's sad. It leaves all the people out in the countryside feeling like they have no voice. And that's what's happening in Virginia. Now, why is it happening? Why Virginia? There's probably some of you that know. I'll admit, I don't really know why they picked Virginia. Maybe it was just, a roll of the dice and, hey, we're going to go to Virginia next. Michael Bloomberg has spent millions of dollars. In fact, he alone has outspent the pro-gun lobby in Virginia. I mean, he's throwing a lot of his personal money into Virginia to get these legislations passed. So they must know something. They must know that this is an important battleground. And one thing to remember is that Virginia has always been an important battleground in the United States. Going back to the past 2 civil wars, the Revolutionary War and the war between the North and the South. Virginia was very, very critical in both of those wars. And so for whatever reason, and you could look at it from a logistics standpoint, where it sets, it's close to the U.S. Capitol, that kind of stuff. But they must believe that Virginia is the battleground state. So if they get some of this legislation passed, will it start a civil war? It's very possible. Most of those people in Virginia that aren't the liberals, that aren't in the big cities and stuff, they're very country people. And I could be wrong, but I don't think a lot of them are going to go down that easily. I would hope that they don't. You've got this legislation that they're trying to push, and a lot of people are like, well, it may not pass, and it may not. They may not get all this stuff done this time. But what happens, and most of you know this, what happens is they'll put up some radical, highly restrictive bill that they're trying to get passed, and it doesn't get passed. Or only just a small portion of it gets passed. But they use it kind of as a feeler to see, what the mood of the people are. And then the next time around, they'll try it again. And they may try it 2 or 3 times, but eventually people will soften up, and they will, people will be okay with it, and the legislatures will be okay with it. And so we have to be careful with that. I've always said, don't worry about California or Washington or some of those other just ridiculously liberal states, in the fact that they are, really controlling things. What you need to worry about them is that they are influencing. They're influencing other people, other states, and that is the danger. These laws get passed in California, for instance, and they may have passed laws, decades ago, and the rest of the country, are still conservative in this area. And then little by little, you start seeing states pass laws like California. And this is going to be one of those instances. For the last, 10, 15 years, there has been a movement towards better gun legislation, more pro-Second Amendment legislation. Many of these states have constitutional carry now. There's been a big push, and now we're going to start seeing the pushback. I mean, we have all along, but I think that they're up in the game a little bit, and maybe a lot. And I think that's what we're seeing in Virginia. So even though you may not live anywhere near Virginia, I think personally that what is happening there is very important. I've talked about it quite a bit lately, that there's so many things going on right now in our country and around the world that it would not take very much, I don't think, to be the tipping point to push our society over the edge. There's just too many things going on all at once, and the rift between the left and the right, and the religious and the racial, and gender and all this kind of stuff. I don't think it would take very much, and it could be Virginia. I'm not saying it is. There's some that are claiming, they're swearing up and down that it will be Virginia is the tipping point. But I believe that it could be something like that, and I think that it will come in areas that we least expect it. Because like I said, excuse me, if something like this was to pass, or be talked about in California, as much as people wouldn't like it, as the conservatives, most people in the end would be like, it's California, that's what they do. They're a bunch of commies out there. They pass ridiculous commie legislation. And so, the people that control things, the oligarchy, they know that too. And they know that if they, continue to pass stuff in places like California and Portland and all these cities that are hard left, that it's not going to get anything done. It's not going to change anything. And what they want, this upheaval of society. They want that. The people that control things, the oligarchy, they want a civil war. I believe it in my heart. They want that. And they're not going to get that by continually putting all their time and money into already communist areas. They've got to move into new areas. And you're going to see that more and more coming to places where you live. And we have to be aware of it. We have to be proactive about it and prepared. Prepared, that this, things like this and a buildup of legislation that is happening in Virginia across America could be a tipping point for sure for social unrest, which is a nice politically correct word for civil war. So be aware of what's going on. We talk about that on this channel a lot, and I kind of go back and forth on how much I want to watch the news, and I'm not talking mainstream news. I don't watch them, but even online, I'll just get frustrated. I'll get tired of it. I'll get burnt out. It's just kind of a downer, and so there'll be times that I just ignore it for a while. But we really can't do that all the time. We do need to be aware of what's going on so that we can be aware of the nature of things that are happening so that we can be prepared. You don't want to be caught off guard or like, oh, I didn't know that was going on. You mean there's riots in the streets in every big city? That kind of stuff. You got to be more prepared. And I'm not talking just physically prepared. So unfortunately, that means that we kind of have to, have feelers out on what's going on in the news and across the country. And this thing in Virginia is one of those. I believe it's awful. I mean, the legislation that they're trying to pass is just it's ridiculous, is what it is. Basically, it's going to just about outlaw semi-automatic weapons. Period. It's just almost going to do that. And then basically you can't meet or train or anything with a firearm. And if you receive some training from some guy, maybe it's firearms training, and then you go out and you're carrying that weapon and something happens, then they'll come back on the guy that trained you. So it's also going to hurt businesses, because there's legitimate businesses out there that train people in how to use firearms. That's a legitimate industry. And these laws are going to hurt a lot of things, not just your right to keep and bear arms. So you need to be watching this one, folks, because it could be the tipping point. I'm not saying that it is, but this or something very much like it could be that tipping point, because the silent majority out there have been silent for a long time, and I think they're getting, they're like a festering pimple. They're just about ready to pop because of the stuff that they're seeing happen all around them. And something like these laws that they're trying to get passed in Virginia could be that. So anyways, stay on top of it, okay? All right, well, thank you all for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.